I started the journey back in 2014. I had a couple of clients from the agency days who decided to partner with me when I went in alone. But we have grown since then to about 12 employees, and we have satellite offices in Richmond and in New York, Boston, and in Raleigh as well. A large area of our practice, I would say, is marketing mix. That I would say is around 40 to 50% of our revenues, and we did about 25 marketing mix studies last year. I think we are in pace to do similar kind of analysis this year, and BayesiaLab continues to be one of the key softwares that we use for the analysis. So without further ado, I'll go why we do so much of marketing mix and why is it important to follow this particular arena. A key question I think we have in the industry today is on the basis of marketing accountability. And I have one of the quotes from John Seifert, who's the chairman CEO of Ogilvy Worldwide, that in the area of marketing, one of the most challenging parts of my job right now is validating the spending that our clients are doing to create value for the business, right? And that's important because billions of ad dollars are spent each year in the industry. A lot of that is not really truly accounted for. There are small pieces of analysis that is done, but no one truly understands the ROI of their marketing investments. So dealing in the area of marketing mix is very important for marketers to understand how their investments are being utilized and what's the best return on their dollars. You'll see a similar phrase from Bruce Rogers, who is the Chief Insights Officer and Head of CMO Practice in Forbes Media, on the role of CMO. And when you have time, I think you should go through the video link that I have below. It's from the World Economic Forum in Davos, where you have Mark Pritchard and you have John Seifert and a couple of other key important players in the industry who talk about the area of marketing mix and accountability. So I think it's a good presentation. When you get a chance, please visit that link and listen to that presentation, which deals on marketing accountability and fair marketing practices. So what is marketing mix? I know a large section of the audience is not from the area of marketing. They are more into government policies and other things that related to medical research, which really matter. So I'm glad that Stefan has this first line of speakers who are in the marketing world, because we don't really matter, right, Stefan? And then you have the next lineup in the afternoon who do real work in the industry, I guess. So, but I'll speak on what is marketing mix. It's a statistical analysis which deals with historical investment data that you might have. And then what we are trying to relate to, what we are trying to file causal understanding of is how do these marketing investments help sales or any of the key communication goals that might be around brand awareness or consideration and so forth. What has really happened in this arena is a lot of the historical data that we had is no longer relevant because of the dynamic nature of marketing, the changes that CMO makes every quarter and so on and so forth, new media that is being introduced. You need to have a analysis, a way to measure this changing nature in the marketing landscape, which is also a great arena for BayesiaLab, because I think as other speakers have talked about, you can use it for risk assessment and for innovation and intervention, which are new areas and where you don't really have a lot of historic data, but CMOs want to understand if I were to invest $10 million in YouTube or in social media, what would be the implications going around in the next quarter and so forth. So if you are going to introduce new media which doesn't really have historic data, again, it's kind of an intervention measure, and people want to understand what is the risk associated with introducing that new media, which we can exploit using the BayesiaLab software. So talking about the business challenge that we had, as I said, the client is a top 10 optical retailer in the country with significant media and promotional expenditure. And some of the key questions that they were trying to solve for is, how can we develop a predictive analytics solutions that help us allocate media and promotional dollars? Not only nationally, but can we make some strategic decisions in the key local markets where a lot of their business was established. So they were looking for a solution which not only solves for their media and promotional spend and optimization nationally, but also in some of their key local markets. Then which of these promotions and media are high contributors to sales historically across markets, and are there differences in performance? Can we run scenarios based on certain media constraints? And then what is the current ROI, which is, as I said, which is the question that every marketer is trying to solve for. What is the current ROMI or current ROI on our marketing investments, and how can it be maximized going forward to meet the sales objectives? This was the strategy that they adopted. It's not pretty different from some of the strategies we have seen historically. Other marketeers get into, traditionally they try to look at last year budgets, make a few tweaks, go into a marketing planning session, and come out with a new media budget. And as trivial as it might sound, this is an activity practiced in a lot of companies today, where they'll just look at what they did last year, make a few changes on things that didn't work, and come out with a big budget plan. And I'm talking about hundreds and millions of dollars in marketing budget. But that was what they practiced. The other challenge that we had was each media department was planning their media operations kind of in their own silos. So you had a person responsible for dealing with display ads and paid search, while there was another person responsible for some of their offline media related to TV, radio, and so forth. So many of these individual people were operating in their own departments, kind of running their own show, and it was very difficult to kind of synergize these operations, get them on the same platform. And we dealt with a lot of, the good part of marketing mix modeling is you bring all of this information together, which also means that all these people need to be kind of in the same forum, the same platform, talk kind of the same language, which is, again, I think, one of the good things that can happen with this exercise. The planning cycle didn't maximize some of the synergies and decay and all of that in media. They couldn't really allocate for sales to some of their addressable media. They had specific media attribution studies and so forth, but they had never taken a holistic view of all of their marketing investments together. And then assessing impact of new media or what are the changes that happened was something that they didn't really have a measurement tool, a measurement framework for. More importantly, as I mentioned in the last point, they didn't really know the impact of increased and decreased marketing spend. It wasn't clearly analyzed. They didn't really have that analysis done with the current set of frameworks that they had. These are some of the data variables that went out in the analysis. We obviously had some of the business data that we collected from them. We also brought into account all of the media data from various departments. We had the promotional data. We also had some of the economic data, because macroeconomics plays a huge role in any business. So we had to collect the economic data, and we also had demographic data from this client. So it was pretty significant data collection exercise that we did across several different data sources, several different departments, which I think we accomplished still in, I think, 3 to 4 weeks, which was pretty good, that we believed that we made a measure investment in collecting this data together, and we managed it in a fair amount of time. One of the key questions that we started out with when we originally started this discussion was, do we need a national model or do we need a local triple M? And what we came about in this analysis and what we came about in the initial discovery sessions that we did with the client was a lot of the questions that they had, they understood the national media reasonably well, I would say. They didn't have significant analysis, but they understood how it worked. What they did not understand was what was the role of this national media spend in some of their key markets. What happened in certain place in California or in Texas as they launched new stores or cut down some of their other expenditures. How did media impact some of their investments? So they didn't really have a handle on some of the local media tactics. Also, in the initial analysis, we realized that national media seldom went dark. Some of the key media that they had at a national level didn't go dark in certain times of the year. But if you really went deeper, you realize that in certain regions, they never had TV running for a certain amount of time or radio running for a certain amount of time. So there were nuances that they hadn't really analyzed in their previous work. The other thing that was into consideration was some of the models that they had done previously, they were weighted by historical data. But what had happened in the last couple of years was that company had been bought by a private equity player. Some of the key management had changed. They had made major significant changes in their media as well. And so there were things that had changed drastically in the last 2 years, which needed to be taken into consideration. Some of the old data, which is so important, as all of you know, in the world of analysis, wasn't quite relevant. And whenever that happens, you have the problem of sparse data. Client is trying for you to solve a problem which is pretty significant. We don't have a lot of data. At that point, aggregating the national data at a local level would just improve the number of records or observations that we had. And that was one of the reasons we started using the local media mix modeling kind of exercise. And then the other point that was significant was when you use that kind of analysis, it is important people who are in the media world know that they have to localize some of the national media that was being bought at the local markets. And I give an example that you can have TV, which might reach certain saturation levels in New York, but might not be the case in Richmond, depending on the size of the market. And so you'll need to localize some of the media that you get. So that was some of the challenges that we faced. Some of the other issues, and I'll not go into deep into this analysis, where as you move away from national level models to local level models, you'll see that certain data can be easily collected, while certain data can't be easily collected, and we face similar issues. And we had to infer and impute some of the data, and it was pretty significant exercise to try and understand the different kinds of media and how we could aggregate the data at a local level. So enters BayesiaLab, and why we utilize this software, as I said, for various media mix modeling exercises. I think I have done media mix modeling for over 10, 15 years, and there are different kinds of applications that are available, different kind of programming interfaces. But I think one of the key things that I like about the BayesiaLab software is it represents the full uncertainty in the model. A lot of other kinds of modeling approach can be highly deterministic, while BayesiaLab is a highly probabilistic approach. And it helps you understand the full uncertainty in the level of modeling and the parameter values, which is I think a key point. The ability to incorporate some kind of prior information, so things that have worked, people who have done some kind of attribution analysis, there is some existing body of research on why certain media has worked well. You can incorporate that prior information, that knowledge that domain experts have. You kind of don't approach in a black box kind of approach as a lot of other analytical exercises tend to do. They'll just collect data and go away and deliver a model in 6 to 8 weeks. But here you can interact with the domain experts, collect some of the prior information and their beliefs that they have, how media has worked, and incorporate those beliefs along with the data to make insights more actionable. So I think that is a tremendous advantage of using the BayesiaLab software. As I said, it's a probabilistic inference, and then you also get the visual relationship in the network. I think one of the key features I mentioned that in the last point is it's a forward-looking approach. We require all this historical data for analysis, but what is more important for CMOs and CEOs is how do we utilize some of the learnings from these models going forward, knowing what has happened in the past. And here again, people have been looking for, with BayesiaLab, you can use some kind of assessments in the industry. You can use some kind of interventions and innovation. So in those areas, when you are changing things, as I said, the marketing landscape is highly dynamic. You can establish nodes in the network based on some domain experts and theories or some studies, and then see what is the impact of establishing or now having this new information in your network, and how does it play in the system. And that provides them some decision support, where if you think about it, historically they had no idea how a new channel would work, or how a certain event that has happened in their organization or across the industry would impact their business. But those are some of the things that we can do. I guess, as I mentioned in humor, some of the people, when we do these exercises, ask, are we absolutely sure this will predict the future? Well, there's no guarantee. No one absolutely knows what is the future. But there's a common question that is asked to me, oh, now that you established these nodes, these intervention nodes, are we really sure this is exactly what is going to happen? I said, no, but this does provide you the risk, the probabilistic framework of what could be the impact of this particular intervention or establishing a new media or an event happening in the industry on your business. And that provides them in adequate decision support to make some decisions. One of the important processes, even before we use BayesiaLab, I think is to understand that little bit of work that needs to go. This question has come about when I presented at other events or when we go to clients is, well, if you're using a Bayesian framework, it's probabilistic in nature. Are you taking into consideration time, some of the effects of different media, how the different media react over time and the decay and so forth. So that work needs to go before you kind of introduce these variables in your model. You cannot take these variables contemporaneously in the model. You need to transform these variables into different ad stocking effects, lag effects. Some of you are probably familiar with them, but that is a comprehensive exercise when you have to look at the analysis, look at the data, also work with some of the domain experts and establish the right response curves for each media. Once you have transformed your variables, either using analysis and using domain expertise, you can introduce those variables in the model. Bayesian does have a feature for dealing with temporal effects, which you could use, but I believe you would still need to use a lot of the data preparation before you take these variables in the BayesiaLab framework. So this was kind of the ecosystem that we derived. I can't really disclose the full details because it is client information. But as I said, the key part here to take away is the network truly represents the complex marketing ecosystem, the business ecosystem that we deal with. Sometimes when you tell a client that we don't really understand clearly what really has happened, it is fairly complex, though we are trying to answer it in a very simplistic fashion, they might not get it. But when they see this kind of visual representation of the system, I think they get it that it is a complex world that we live in, where we are trying to answer some of the significant questions in a naive or a simplistic fashion. So it does provide a true representation, I believe, of a complex system. There are features in BayesiaLab, like you can evaluate the correlation, which is a common statistical measure, but then you can also look at mutual information criteria and a few other metrics to make sure that the variables that you have are significant and are truly adding value to the analysis. We did achieve a pretty high precision scores on R-square across the analysis. Couple of things to understand here is we can use the k-folds validation measure in BayesiaLab. And it's fine to use that because this question has again come out before. Even though the network is temporal, it is time dependent. The fact that you have now taken time, you have created all these variables in advance, you can view it as a panel data even though you are taking time dependent variables. Because this is a pretty important question, that is the nature of data kind of changed now that you are doing k-folds validation? The answer is not truly. You can analyze the data across different subsets. You already created the variables, and now you're just trying to understand if the network is stable across those different subsets. This is pretty standard analysis. You take some kind of modeling data set, have a validation data set, make sure that it works. In BayesiaLab also, we do this not only through BayesiaLab, but through Python as well, Python programming as well. But in BayesiaLab, there is an efficient way that once you establish the network, you kind of take a holdout data set and use the batch inference mode to make sure that you apply this network to a holdout data set and then get the prediction values. So that there is a way in BayesiaLab that you can utilize existing model network and then get the inferences from it. Some of the key results which the client are looking to achieve, and these numbers are changed obviously because this is client data, but I just wanted to give a full blown out presentation on some of the expectations of the client and what they're looking forward to with media mix analysis is what are the key drivers which they have currently, right? So how does competitive media and promotions impact their current sales? But more importantly, they are also looking at elasticity. What is going to be the incremental risk, or what is going to be the incremental elasticity of these key drivers to their business going forward, right? And so their question is, how much does media contribute now, but what is the more incremental contribution to media going forward? Should we invest more or less? Which again, the BayesiaLab framework allows us to answer using total effects and direct effects analysis. This is just giving a brief understanding of what the base. This is question again, which is pretty common. What is the base that we are talking about? The base is nothing but some of the market level characteristics, the seasonality, the economic indicators, and so forth. Which again, the client, it's useful for the client to know what really compromises the base, because they don't truly understand what the base measures are. This talks about, again, as I said, within the media, they wanted to understand the key question, as I said before, one of the business challenges was, how does media perform first at a national level? So this helped them to understand how media contributions work at a national level, and then more importantly, what is going to be the elasticity going forward for all of their media. This again is a national level slide. If you remember, the client was running specific promotions nationally, and then we obviously mark what the actual promotions are. So you'll just see here Promo 1 and Promo 2 and so forth. But again, with BayesiaLab, it is very easy to understand in a complex ecosystem what kind of promotions really yield the largest amount of value to their business. You'll also see then what is the elasticity of these promotions going forward, as I said, in the future, which they will be able to utilize for their quarterly campaigns. ROI is again an important measure of the analysis. The clients want to understand not only the current ROMI on their marketing investments, but what is going to be the incremental ROI for all of these channels. Some of these things you can do in BayesiaLab. Obviously, to get to the actual spend numbers, you will need to do it outside BayesiaLab once you run the optimizations, and it gives you what should be the optimal contribution or allocation of media that can happen. You will need to do some part of the analysis probably in Excel to get to the actual results. Talking about optimization, there are, I know, several advances that have been done in the optimization feature in BayesiaLab. I think the genetic algorithms are great. I think there are a couple other things that have been done, but it allows you to truly see the different ranges and constraints that you can establish for your media variable or whatever are your decision variables. You can establish various constraints. You can also run a full-blown optimization if there are no constraints in your media, and you can get variety of results around what is the impact of all of this media or promotional drivers in maximizing your sales. The goal here, as you can see, is trying to maximize for sales. So you can run all this optimizations in BayesiaLab and get fairly quick results. When you try to do this outside BayesiaLab in some of the other programs, for example, you can use Stan, I guess in our software, you can use the Stan optimization algorithms. It might take a lot of time, but this BayesiaLab allows you to run these optimizations fairly quickly. And you can actually validate some of them using other softwares as well. This is a key feature. As I said, a key part of the analysis was also trying to understand the contribution and elasticity of both media and promotions across local markets. And if you think about it, trying to do that using some of the other processes would be a humongous exercise if you were to do it market by market. But in BayesiaLab, you can use the breakout feature, which is called a multi-quadrant analysis, and kind of use that to break it out by market, wherein BayesiaLab generates a network literally for each market. And we generated the network over 90 different markets, I think. So it was a pretty fast exercise if you would think of it, but we could understand the level of contribution and elasticity of each media and promotions for all those markets. So here's some of the key things which I think the client found interesting. We earlier looked at a slide for what is the level of elasticity of media overall at a national level. But then when you drill it down to some key local markets and look at those networks, you can see some of the differences in terms of what kind of allocations that need to be done at a local level. And those allocations are a little different than what they would have seen at the national level. Some of the rank ordering has changed, some of the elasticity and contributions have changed as well, which was important insight for the client. They didn't really have insights into how it worked in different markets, but this really allowed them to see how it worked differently in different markets. Sorry, I have a bad cough today. As I said, this also allowed them to look at promotions and how promotional elasticity would be there overall at nationwide, but then it also allows them to drill down into local markets as well. And same is the case for media optimization. We could utilize the software run processes at a national level as well as a local level. So these are some of the key model learnings and actions. Since implementing the model, the client has seen a growth in their sales, which was pretty significant. They have managed to optimize their media performance by around 28% increase in ROMI. They are utilizing this test and learn method to see impacts for TV, radio, and digital at the same time in different markets. And they are also planning significant media spend in social media. So those are some of the new things that they are going to try utilizing the model. And this is, I think, a true success story. I wanted to add this at the end. When we first began the model, it was largely driven both by client company. It was acquired actually by a private equity player. So one of the key things that they were trying to do was utilize the model, but then once they had the model insights, use it to kind of make significant cuts in the marketing and media department based on the analysis. But now seeing the implementation of the model and success that has followed later on, they have actually managed to grow their media spend by 14%. The private equity player has been convinced that adding new media is going to help the business, and they have agreed to increase some of the media spend. The cool part is their media and marketing department has increased, and our key project sponsor, she was the director of marketing when we first started the process, and now she's evolved to become the CMO for the company, which is always a good thing. So, that was kind of cool to see how the models evolved and the insights, how they have been incorporated. As I said, as they add new media, as they try to assess new risks, they're going to utilize this model going forward. So we are excited about it.